Find even more drawing tips inside the pages of the Phoenix comic, along with great stories and more. Let's take all we've learned about drawing mountains, trees and clouds from my previous tutorials and combine them together to create an epic backdrop for your comics. Start with a curved line to simulate the natural curve of the Earth. Draw a series of mountain peaks on the horizon. Refer back to the mountain tutorial from the other week if you need some tips. Add a large river starting as a single line and getting larger as it gets closer. It's a bit different to drawing skyscrapers, but remember your perspective. Add more mountains in the midground. To add depth and layers to your drawing, it's a nice touch to have your midground mountains overlapping the mountains on the horizon. I'm working on a computer, so it's easy for me to delete the distant mountains, but you can just use an eraser if you're working on paper. While we're at it, let's get rid of that red horizon line now. The basics are all there. Add some foreground ridges for depth and then add some trees. By adding a little bit of foreground, we can draw some larger trees at the front and add a bit more detail to them to help the eye understand the trees in the distance. Without the visual cue, they could look a bit strange. Because I'm working digitally, I can zoom in to add more detail, but the trick with working this way is not adding too much detail that when zoomed out and printed, you're never going to see. Don't draw every tree individually, but hint at a vast forest. Less is more. Check out this week's pro tip in the Phoenix comic for tips on drawing a fantasy kingdom. The key thing to remember when drawing distant structures is you can cut down on the smaller details. So if you were drawing a castle close up, you'd be adding brickwork, tiles, windows, flags, etc. But you don't need any of that here. It's all about simplifying your shapes. So in this kingdom, the castle is nothing more than a series of spires. The building's roofs are just triangles and the castle wall turrets are just basic cylinders. Let's add a few roads leading down to a port on the river and add some boats. These are the tiniest of details, but they can really make it feel like your fantasy world is a real, lived-in place. World building is so important in comics. Now I'm being a bit naughty here as I've drawn the castle at a slightly wonky angle, but because I've done it digitally, I can rotate it a little to get it just right. I know, what a cheat, right? I think the reason this happened is because I was zoomed in too closely and couldn't see the surrounding details to get the placement just right. If you're working on paper, this won't be as much of an issue. Finally, let's finish things off with sunbeams and dramatic clouds. For further tips on how to draw clouds, check out the Pro Tip tutorial in the Phoenix comic. For more how to draw tutorials, make sure you like this video and then subscribe to our channel. You can also find even more drawing tips inside the pages of the Phoenix comic, along with great stories and more. Click the link in the description below to find out how you can get the Phoenix delivered straight to your door every week.